AITA for locking my parents out of my vacation home for giving my house to my sister? My husband Eric and I arrived in our car at the banquet hall where my sister Megan's wedding was about to be celebrated. The envelope with the $10,000 was tucked away securely in the inside pocket of Eric's suit jacket. It was our wedding gift for Megan. Besides that, we had already covered about a third of the wedding expenses. It was a lot of money, but Eric's job at an investment firm and my position as marketing director meant we could afford that luxury. And besides, Megan was my only sister. Upon entering, I saw my parents immediately. Mom was fixing my dad's tie while he pretended it bothered him, but I could catch the hidden smile on his lips. They looked radiant. That was the only word for it. My mom's face practically glowed with happiness and my dad looked 10 years younger. Something churned in my stomach. I could not remember seeing them this happy at my wedding 5 years ago. They had been polite, of course, but not like this, not overflowing with pride and joy. I quickly pushed that thought aside. It was not the time to bring up old feelings. The ceremony went perfectly. Megan looked spectacular in her dress and her now husband Kyle could not take his eyes off her. I sat between my parents and Eric trying to focus on the happiness of the day, and not on that nagging feeling that my parents' reaction was somehow different from the one they had at my wedding. After the ceremony came the reception. We ate, drank, danced, and then it was time for the speeches. First the best man spoke, then the maid of honor, and finally my parents stood up together. Mom gently tapped her glass. "We want to thank everyone for coming today to celebrate the wedding of our beloved daughter," she said. There was something in the way she stressed beloved that made me shift uncomfortably in my chair. Eric must have noticed because he placed his hand over mine. My dad continued. "Watching Megan grow up to become the beautiful woman she is today has been the greatest joy of our lives," he said. "She has always been special. She has always brought so much light to our home." I smiled and nodded, wondering if I was just being overly sensitive. Of course they loved Megan. They loved both of us. I repeated to myself. Then Mom reached into her purse and pulled out some papers. "Call Megan, your father and I wanted to give you something to start your life together, something special," she said. She held up the papers so everyone could see them. "We are giving you our family home as a wedding gift." The entire room let out an "oh" of surprise, followed by loud applause. I froze. Beside me, Eric tensed up. I looked at my parents and then at Megan, waiting for someone to burst out laughing and say it was a joke, but it was not. My parents smiled proudly and Megan did not look surprised at all. She was crying tears of happiness as she hugged Kyle, who was looking at my parents with his mouth open in excitement. The house, my parents' house. The house whose mortgage I had been paying for the last 5 years because they could no longer cover it when my dad's hours were cut, and my mom's arthritis made it difficult for her to continue working full-time. I managed to keep a smile on my face, but inside I was screaming. Not once, not even once, had they mentioned to me that they were thinking of giving the house to Megan. They had not even brought it up to me, and I was the one paying for it. "Rachel, are you okay?" Eric whispered. "Fine," I replied through gritted teeth, still smiling as Megan and Kyle went up front to hug my parents. An hour later, I could not take it anymore. I found Eric at the bar. "Should we leave?" I asked him quietly. He looked at my face and nodded without saying a word. "I will go get the coats." We excused ourselves. We said Eric had an early meeting, that we were very sorry, that it had been a beautiful wedding, congratulations, and we left before anyone could insist too much. As soon as we closed the car door, I burst into tears. "I cannot believe they did that," I sobbed as Eric started the engine. "I have been paying that mortgage for 5 years, and they did not even tell me they were planning this." "I know," Eric said with a serious expression. "It is unbelievable." "And Megan knew," I said, furiously wiping away my tears. "Did you see her face?" She was not surprised at all. "It is not about the money," I continued. "I do not care about the money, but they could have at least talked to me first." As we drove back to Denver, the memories started coming one after another. All the times my parents had shown clear favoritism toward Megan. "Do you remember when I graduated from college and they gave me a card with the equivalent of $50? I said. "When Megan graduated 2 years later, they bought her a car." "That was not right," Eric agreed. "And my 21st birthday dinner, which they did not go to because Megan had a basketball game," I continued. "Not even a final or anything important, just another game." The more I talked, the more examples came to mind. Every time Megan got what she wanted while I was ignored or taken for granted. I remembered how my parents attended all of Megan's events but always found excuses not to go to mine. How they bragged about Megan's achievements but barely mentioned mine. When we finally got home, I was exhausted from crying and talking so much. "And where are your parents going to live now?" Eric asked as we got ready for bed. "If they gave the house to Megan and Kyle." I shrugged as I put on my pajamas. "I have no idea and it is no longer my problem." I turned off the light and rolled over, trying to ignore the ache in my chest. For the next 3 weeks I went to work. I came home and tried not to think about the wedding or the house or any of it. Then one afternoon my phone rang. It was my mom. Against my better judgment I answered. "Rachel, daughter," Mom said as if nothing had happened. "This weekend we are having a little family dinner. Your sister and Kyle are back from their honeymoon and we would love for you and Eric to come." I wanted to say no, I wanted to hang up, but a part of me, the foolish and still hopeful part, wondered if maybe they would apologize, if maybe they would explain something to me. "All right," I said in a flat voice. "We will go." Saturday arrived too quickly. As we parked, I saw Megan's car in the driveway next to my parents' old sedan. We walked up to the front door and I hesitated for a second before ringing the bell. It felt weird not using my key, but that was no longer my parents' house. It was now Megan and Kyle's. Mom opened the door smiling. "Rachel, Eric, come in," she said. She hugged me as if nothing had happened, as if she had not given away the house I was paying for without even talking to me. I hugged her back stiffly. My dad was in the living room with Kyle watching a game. He stood up when he saw us, shook Eric's hand and gave me a quick hug. "And Megan?" I asked when I did not see her. "She is changing the dining room curtains," Mom said casually. "She has been redecorating all week." My blood boiled. 3 weeks. It had only been 3 weeks since the wedding and Megan was already changing everything, as if she had lived there all her life. We walked into the dining room and there was my sister standing on a small stepladder hanging cream-colored curtains in place of my mom's lifelong blue curtains. "Dinner is ready," Mom announced. "Everyone sit down." We took our seats. I sat between Eric and my dad with Mom and Megan across from us and Kyle at the head of the table. The food looked delicious, my mom's famous beef stew with all the sides, but I had absolutely no appetite. The first 10 minutes were spent with Megan and Kyle describing their honeymoon in Hawaii in great detail. I picked at my food and nodded occasionally while Eric asked the typical questions to keep the conversation going. When Megan finally stopped to take a breath, Mom cleared her throat. "We wanted to talk to you about something, Rachel," she said. "Well, as you know, we have given the house to Megan and Kyle as a wedding gift." "Yes, I noticed," I replied dryly. Mom continued as if she had not heard the tone in my voice. "The thing is, they are a young couple, they are starting their lives, they need their own space." I stayed quiet, waiting for her to get to the point. My dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "What your mother is trying to say," he said, "is that we cannot live here with them. They need privacy." "I see," I said. "I still do not understand what that has to do with me." "Well, we have been thinking," Mom said slowly. "And we have decided that we are going to move into your vacation home. It is the perfect size for us and it is in a very quiet area." I carefully placed my silverware on my plate. The vacation home they were talking about was a little cabin I had bought with my own money before I even met Eric. I had saved for years to be able to afford it, working overtime and weekends. It was my special place where I could escape the noise of the city, and sometimes I lent it to my parents so they could spend a weekend there. "Let me see if I understood correctly," I said, keeping my voice as steady as possible. "You gave your house, the house whose mortgage I have been paying for 5 years, to Megan and Kyle. And now you plan to move into my vacation home without even asking me first." "Rachel," my dad said, frowning. "Be reasonable. Where else are we supposed to go?" "That is not my problem," I replied. "You had a house. You gave it away without consulting me, even though I was paying for it. And now you expect me to simply hand over my cabin. It is not like you use it that much, huh?" Megan chimed in. I looked at her, unable to hide my anger. "Are you serious?" I asked. "It is my property. I bought it with my money. I decide who uses it and when." My mom's face grew pale. "You cannot be serious. Do not tell me you are going to say no." "That is exactly what I am saying," I replied. No, you are not moving into my vacation home, not now, not ever. The table fell silent. Then Mom's face crumpled. How could you do this to us? She cried. After everything we have done for you, we are your parents. Yes, I said, and as my parents, the least you could do was talk to me before giving away a house I was paying for and deciding you were going to take over my property. You have no right to refuse, Mom said, raising her voice. We have nowhere to go. Of course you have somewhere to go, I replied. You have your house, the one I have been paying for 5 years, except you decided to give it to Megan. So now it is up to you to figure out where to live. Megan slammed her hand on the table. God, you are so cruel and selfish, she shouted. You have always been jealous of me because Mom and Dad love me more. You have always envied our relationship. I stared at her, stunned by her outburst. Then I turned to her, suddenly very calm. If Mom and Dad love you so much and you love them so much, I said, why do not you let them live here with you? This house has 4 bedrooms, plenty of space. Megan's mouth snapped shut. She looked away, suddenly very interested in her plate. That is not the point, Kyle muttered. We need privacy. I need my vacation home, I answered. Seems we both have needs. My parents started talking at the same time, telling me I was wrong, that I was a disappointment, that I was selfish. I stopped listening to them. I stood up and grabbed my purse. Eric, I think we are done here, I said. The next day my phone would not stop ringing. Messages and calls from my parents and Megan. I ignored them all. Some messages called me selfish, others begged me to reconsider. Others tried to make me feel guilty by reminding me of everything they had supposedly done for me. I showed some to Eric, who shook his head. I think I need to block them for a while, I said. I cannot keep reading this. Do what you have to do, he replied, giving me a kiss on the forehead. Take care of yourself first. So I did. I blocked their numbers and their social media accounts, at least for a while. I needed space to think and process everything that had happened. 2 weeks of blessed silence passed. No calls, no messages, no family drama. Eric and I went back to our normal routine: work, home, a few dinners with friends who were not trying to take my things. It was nice. I was at my desk reviewing a marketing campaign when my phone vibrated with an alert. I looked at the screen and felt my stomach drop. It was a notification from my vacation home security system. Motion detected. Front door open. I quickly logged into the app. Someone had used a key to open the door, but had not deactivated the alarm. The security company was going to call me any second to verify if it was an authorized entry. Sure enough, the phone rang almost immediately. Mrs. Ellis, this is security calling, a voice said. We have detected entry at your property up in the mountains. Is it an authorized access? No, I said firmly. I am not there and no one has permission to be there. Please send the police immediately. An hour later, the phone rang again. It was a police officer. Mrs. Ellis, this is Officer Thompson, he said. We are at your property up in the mountains and we have 2 people here who claim to be your parents. They have keys, but they admit they do not have permission to be in the house. I closed my eyes, confirming what I already suspected. Yes, they are my parents, I said, but they do not have authorization to be in my house. Not at all. I understand, the officer replied. What do you want us to do? We can remove them from the property, but since they used a key and did not force entry, the issue of charges is a bit of a gray area. I will head over there, I decided. My husband and I can drive. We are about an hour away. The drive was tense. I shifted between rage and disbelief. How could they do that after I clearly told them no? They tried to move in anyway. Who does something like that? When we arrived at the cabin, there was a patrol car in the driveway. 2 officers were standing outside, and sitting on the porch steps were my parents, looking defeated. Next to them were several suitcases and stacked boxes. My dad stood up as soon as he saw us. Rachel, I am so glad you are here. Tell the officers that this is all a misunderstanding, he said. I got out of the car and approached the police officers, ignoring my parents for the moment. Thank you for coming so quickly, I told them. Yes, they are my parents, but they do not have permission to be here. One of the officers nodded. Do you want to press charges for trespassing? He asked. My mom let out a gasp. Rachel, you would not dare? She said. I looked at them. You entered my house after I clearly told you no, I said. What did you think was going to happen? We did not break in, my dad protested. We used the key you gave us yourself. This is all your fault, my mom suddenly yelled, standing up. If you had let us stay here as we had planned, none of this would be happening. We would not be treated like criminals. I looked at her, surprised by the attack. My fault, I repeated. You gave away a house whose mortgage I was paying without consulting me. Then you tried to take over my property without permission. And now it turns out I am the one to blame. You are so arrogant. Mom continued, ignoring what I was saying. So irresponsible. We raised you better than this, we gave you everything. Mom, stop, I said in a low voice. You are making a fool of yourself. You and Dad just tried to move into my house to live here after I told you no. And now, in front of the police officers, you are yelling at me that I am the irresponsible one. That seemed to shut her up. She snapped her mouth shut, although her eyes were still full of indignation. I turned to the officers. I want to speak with you in private, please, I said. We stepped away a few paces. I do not want to press formal charges, I said quietly. They are still my parents, even if they are being completely irrational right now, but I cannot let them stay here either. The officer nodded. We understand, he said. We can take them to the station for a few hours, give them a serious warning about trespassing, keep a record of what happened, and then release them. Sometimes spending some time at the precinct and leaving with a clear warning serves as a wake-up call. I thought about it for a moment. That might be exactly what they need, I replied. Yes, please do that. I went back to where my parents were. The officers are going to take you to the station for a few hours, I said. I am not going to press charges, but I want you to understand how serious this is. You cannot simply move into a house that is not yours without permission, even if it belongs to your daughter. The patrol car left with them while Eric and I waited for the locksmith. I arranged for my parents' belongings to be taken to a nearby storage facility. I paid for 1 month in advance and texted the details to Hannah. Since I still had my parents' numbers blocked, the locksmith arrived and changed all the locks. By the time we left, the cabin was secure again. On the way back to Denver, I felt exhausted but also strangely liberated. For the first time in my adult life, I had stood up to my parents' manipulations and refused to let them take advantage of me. What do you think they will do now? Eric asked as we approached the city. Probably go cry to Megan, I answered. Let her handle it. She kept the house, let her bear the responsibility that comes with it. I was not naive enough to think this was all over. Knowing my mother, she would find a way to make me look like the villain in this whole story. She always did. I was right. A week later, I opened Facebook and found a very long post from my mom. It already had dozens of supportive comments from relatives and family friends. Today I learned what it means to be abandoned by your own daughter, it began. My husband and I in our old age have been thrown out as if we were unwanted animals. Our eldest daughter Rachel called the police to have us removed from her vacation home like criminals, leaving us on the street with nowhere to go. The post went on, conveniently omitting that they had given the house to Megan, that I had paid the mortgage for years, and that they had tried to move into my cabin against my will. As I read the comments, I saw people calling me heartless, cruel, ungrateful. Something inside me broke. I started writing my own post in response. It was time for everyone to hear the full story. I have always preferred to keep family matters private, I wrote. But since my mother decided to expose them publicly, I feel I need to share my version of events. These are the facts that were conveniently left out of her post, I continued. For the past 5 years, I have been paying the mortgage on my parents' house because they could not cover it due to health problems and reduced income. I did it willingly because they are my family and they needed help. 3 weeks ago at my sister Megan's wedding, a wedding to which we also contributed a significant part of the expenses, my parents announced they were giving away that house, the same house whose mortgage I have been paying. To my sister as a wedding gift, they did it without consulting me or even letting me know. When I finally spoke with them after the wedding, they informed me that their plan was to move into my vacation home. Again, without asking me first, it seems they had already coordinated everything with my sister before the wedding. She was keeping their house and they were keeping mine. When I refused to let them move into my cabin, they tried to do it anyway. They used an emergency key I had given them and triggered the security system alarm. That is why the police got involved. Contrary to what my mother's post suggests, I did not have them arrested. I just asked that they be removed from my property because they were trespassing. And then I paid for 1 month of storage for their things. If my parents need a place to live, I added, maybe they should ask my sister for help, who now owns a 4-bedroom house thanks to them and me, since I was the one who paid that mortgage for years. I finished with one last paragraph. I have always tried to help my family, I wrote, but I will not let them take advantage of me, nor will I accept being painted as the villain for refusing to hand over my property after having already paid for theirs. Family is a two-way street. It is about mutual respect, not about taking whatever you want just because we are family. I posted it before I could regret it. Eric read it over my shoulder and nodded. The reaction was immediate. Comments started pouring in from cousins, aunts, uncles, even my parents' friends. Unlike the comments on my mother's post, these were mostly in my favor. I had no idea you were paying their mortgage. How unfair, a cousin wrote. Seriously, they gave away a house you were paying for, wrote someone else. I should have felt vindicated, but mostly I felt tired. The whole ordeal was exhausting, and airing it publicly did not feel good either, even if I was just defending myself. 2 days later, my cousin Hannah called me. I just wanted to know how you are doing, she told me. Your parents tried to move back into their house. Well, Megan's house now, but she would not let them in. I sat up straight in my chair. Seriously? I asked. Yes, Hannah said. Apparently she told them that it was her house now, and that there was no room for them. They are staying in a small apartment. And your mom had to go back to working full-time to be able to pay the rent. I did not know how to feel. A part of me thought they had it coming. They had created this situation themselves. Another part felt a pang of pity. They were still my parents. When I hung up, I told Eric what Hannah had told me. It is simple karma, he commented. Yes, I replied. But I do not feel as satisfied as I thought I would. That is because you are a good person, he said. Unlike certain people we could mention. In the following weeks, my parents tried to contact me several times. I saw their names on my cell phone screen, but I could not answer. I was not ready, the wound was still too fresh. One night, as we were getting ready for bed, Eric asked me, "Do you think you will ever forgive them?" I thought about it for a moment. Maybe someday, I said. Not for them, but for me. Carrying around so much anger is not healthy. And Megan? He asked. I sighed. That is more complicated, I replied. She knew what they were planning, she was part of everything. And when they needed her, she also closed the door on them. At least now you know where you stand, Eric said, hugging me. There are no more illusions about who is important to them and who is not. He was right, as painful as it had all been. It tore off the blindfold I had worn for years. I had tried to win my parents' approval, tried to be just as special to them as Megan. Now I knew that was never going to happen, and strangely that knowledge was liberating. The next morning I saw another missed call from my mom. This time I let it go to voicemail. Rachel, her voice said, but she did not sound so confident anymore. She sounded small, tired. We made a mistake. We made a huge mistake. I know you are angry and you have every right to be, but please call us. We need to talk to you. I deleted the message without returning the call. Maybe someday I would be ready to hear an apology, if that was what they wanted to offer. Maybe someday I would be ready to have them back in my life, but with different rules and very clear boundaries. Not today. Today I was still learning to put myself first, something I should have done a long time ago. As for my vacation home, I decided to put it up for rent. The extra income would not hurt, and I liked the idea of the cabin being full of life, and people enjoying it instead of sitting there empty, acting as a constant reminder of everything that had happened. Yeah. Comment. This story really touched something deep inside me. I've come to realize how important it is to set clear boundaries, even with the people closest to us. Saying no when something doesn't feel right is an act of self-respect, not selfishness. We all deserve relationships built on mutual respect and care. Protecting your peace isn't always easy, but it's necessary for your well-being. Healing from family wounds takes time, and that's completely okay. I hope this encourages you to reflect on your own boundaries and what you truly need. Sometimes choosing yourself is one of the kindest things you can do. Remember that true love and support should flow both ways. Take care of your heart, and know that you're worthy of peace and respect. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.